Hello, hello. Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. We have one more person logging in right now, so just give them a moment and then we'll begin. Okay, well, we have a lot of material to cover in the hour, so I'd like to begin. This is the Designer Basic Training webinar. Today is Wednesday, February 12th, 2020. My name is Eric Johnson, and I will be your Windward training facilitator today. I'm a technical support engineer here at Windward Studios, and I've been here for a little over 2 years now. Well, welcome everyone. You may have noticed that when you logged into the GoToMeeting webinar, you have a toolbar. And the arrow that you see on the screen is put into the raise your hand icon. So if anytime during the webinar you have a question or are experiencing technical difficulties, please feel free to click that button to ask your question or notify me of anything that's wrong. The prompts I have for questions and chat are on my other screen, so I may not see your comment immediately. Usually I wait until the Q&A session at the end to answer questions, but I'll check occasionally, just in case something is posted. Again, this is a basic introduction to the Designer. So I'm assuming that you haven't really used the Designer yet. Maybe you've installed it, but you probably haven't built any templates, so you don't know too much about the interface or how to add tags to the documents. Today, we'll go over the very basic, the fundamental things to do with the Designer. Next week, there's an intermediate training webinar scheduled where we'll cover more advanced features. But for today, I want to give you an idea of the machine I'm working on. My computer is running Windows 10 operating system, which is 64-bit, and I'm also using Office 365, also 64-bit. It is okay to use 32 or 64-bit. We recommend using 64-bit as this allows you to utilize all the memory on your machine when building a template and gathering data from your data source. Because sometimes you're pulling a lot of data and that data requires a lot of memory. I think 32-bit only allows you 2 gigs of memory. With 64-bit, you can utilize all you have in your hardware. And the version of the Designer that I'm using is 16.7.2.16. And it is the latest version, and you can always find the latest version on our downloads webpage. Okay, I want to give you a high-level overview of what we'll be discussing today. We'll take a look at what's within the Windward and Windward Tools tab. We'll create a simple template using the for each and out tags to create a couple of lists. And these 2 tags, the out and the for each tag, are the most popular tags that you'll use. We'll go over the input parameters, or what we consider variables, which are used to filter before you generate the output. We'll also go over a couple of data source wizards, more specifically SQL and JSON. We'll cover how to generate a report, and lastly, how to get some help. Okay, well, we're first going to look at what's in the Windward Tools tab. And you're not going to access this tab that often. It just kind of gets your environment set up. We'll go over the Find and Replace tool. We'll discuss the About button. We'll look at the License button. So if you're using a temporary key and you want to update it to your permanent key, I'll show you where to do this. And I'll show you where to get samples and other tutorials after this webinar. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the designer. I'm going to go ahead and open up a blank Word document. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm using multiple screens and it's opening up on a second screen. Once it opens, I'll bring it over. All right. Here we go. Maybe let's expand this. I'll open up a blank document. Okay. So when you install the designer, there are two tabs added to the Word ribbon. Here, the Windward tab and the Windward Tools tab. Well, we'll then go ahead and take a look at some of the things within the Windward Tools tab right now. Now over here on the left side, in this Tools section, there's this Generate Code button. And now this is handy for developer types. This shows you how to generate the code for our Windward engine for this template that we're working on. So if you're using the .NET, the Java, or the RESTful engine, it shows you the code and how to reference the template, data sources, and variables, and how to generate the output. Next feature that I want to point out is the Find and Replace tool right here. And so this is an easy way to update all your tags in your template. I'm going to go ahead and open this just to show you this. Oop, open down my yellow screen, slide it over. So likely your template will be several pages long, and you can use this tool to update all the tags at once instead of going in and manually updating each tag one by one. So let's say you create a template and when you set up the connection, you gave it a nickname, but now you decide you wanted to make it a descriptive nickname. So you need to come in and update the template with the new data connection nickname. Well, you can use this Find and Replace tool. You can open it up, you can type in what you're looking for, the name of the old nickname for the data source. You can type in what you want to replace it with. You can choose to change it in all the tags. You can choose to just change the data source in just a couple tags. So this gives you a really good ability to update all the tags in your template at once. Okay, now over here in the right to the Tools section is the Options section. First thing I want to point out is the About button. I'm going to go ahead and click that. Oop, and it opened up on my screen. Good. So this gives you information on the version that you're using. Here you can see I'm using version 16.7.2.16, and my Word version is 64-bit. It tells you what version the license is good through. So here you can see my license is valid through version 20. Shows me how many licenses, how many machines or systems I can use this key, the same key on. Here I can use the same license key that I'm using on 50 systems. It also shows you any expiration date. Here my key will set to expire July 30th, 2020. And over here in this box is a list of all the IP addresses. Now these are all the IP addresses of the people that are using the license key at the moment I click this About button. So if you're coming into issues where you're using the license on too many machines, you can come into this About button, see all the IP addresses that are using it, and log off of the appropriate ones. Okay. Also in this Options section is the License button. All right, so if you're performing a major update, say from version 15 to 16, or if you need to change from a temporary license key to a permanent license key, then this is where you'll make that change. You'll just delete the one that's there, copy your license key, your new one, and paste it in this license dialog box. All right. Today, watching the webinar is the best first step to learning the designer. Second step I'd recommend is going to our training guide. And that's accessed through help and then start here. And what it'll do is open up a website, a web page, and it opened on my other screen. And so this is this training guide is sort of like a complement to this webinar. Here we'll give you written instructions for setting up your first template. So you'll come in here and you'll choose the template format, let's say Word template. Then you'll be presented with different options for your data sources. Let's go ahead and go with JSON. And then here's the training guide. And it'll show you how to install the designer, connect to a data source, design your template and insert your data, and generate output. These again, some of the things that we'll be covering in the webinar today. A great next place to take your learning of the designer. Okay, after that, another recommendation in learning the designer is looking at the samples that we provide. So back here in the help, I'm going to click on samples. And this opens up our Getting Started guide. And here you can see that we have sample templates all for different industries. And within that, we have an additional subsection. And we have some tag tutorials, SQL, XML, and JSON. For this webinar, for this part, we're just going to focus on the SQL. So I'm going to select that tag tutorial SQL. And now for any tag that you can utilize in the designer, we have a sample for you. So you could hover over these and you can get a quick idea of what tag. So this sample will be for each tag. This one will be for the if tag. I'm going to go in and click on this if tag sample just to show you what it looks like. And now here, there's step-by-step procedures on how to use the if tag. There's further instructions on how to use the else tag as well. And great thing about this sample is that this template actually connects to our Northwind SQL Server database. So you can actually generate output from all the samples. You can review the output as you go along, learning how to use the tags. So these samples are a great reference for how to use specific tags with examples of each. All right, let's get back to the slides for a moment. Okay, we just talked about the Windward Tools tab. Now let's go over the Windward tab. And within this tab, we'll connect to a data source. And once we've connected to a data source, we'll go ahead and create a template, a very easy template, using some for each and out tags. Also in the Windward tab, I'll show you how to select the tag, how to pull your data in using the data bin. I'll show you how to insert using the wizards for SQL and JSON. I'll show you how to create an input parameter and how to generate output. Okay, now for an overview of what a for each tag is. Well, a for each tag does three things. First thing it does is it fetches a set of data or the specific data that you want to utilize from your data source. Second, it repeats that data through an iterative loop. For example, if you're trying to create a list. And third thing it does is it repeats the contents between the beginning for each tag and the ending for each tag. Now, the end for each tag just tells the designer when to stop repeating content with each iteration of the loop. The for each tag is a tag that you will use regularly. Now, the most common tag is the out tag, and the out tag is basically short for output. So when you're trying to display data within your template from your data source, so when you're ready to display a number, an image, or text, this is when you'll use the out tag. Now, tags are simply placeholders for your data. The for each tag doesn't display any information. It just gathers the data that you want to use, loops through the data, and repeats the contents between the beginning and ending for each tag. The out tag actually displays the data that you want your users to see. Okay, let's go back to Word and start creating a template. So I'm going to go ahead and open up another blank Word document. All right, now the first thing to do when creating a template is to connect to the data. So I'm going to make sure I open up the Windward Tab. And now over here on the left side in the data section is our data sources button. And this is the button that will connect the template to your data. So if you use an XML, JSON, SQL, or OData, this is where you'll set up the connections. I'm going to go ahead and click on the data sources button, and this opens up our connection editor right here. When it opens, it'll open most likely to the Connections tab. Here you'll have an active section and a recent inactive section. We're not connected to anything right now, so that's why the active section is empty. And the recent inactive is just a bunch of data connections that I've connected templates to in the past. It saves those so you don't always have to recreate the connection. You could just, if you've created it recently, can come in here, find it in the end, active, and connect to it. But for this example, we're going to go ahead and create a new data source connection. So I'm going to click on the new button, new tab right here. And here are the different type of connections I can connect to. I have a connection set up to connect to Salesforce. I can connect to JSON, OData, XML, XPath 1 and 2. I can set up a connection to different SQL data sources. You may need a different connector. If you're connecting to a different SQL data source, and the connection isn't listed here, well, you can go on our Ohana, and you can search for that data connection, and that Ohana article will help you install those drivers on your system for the connection that you're looking for. That Ohana article will give you step-by-step instructions on obtaining and also installing the proper drivers. For today, I'm going to connect to our Northwind SQL database. So I'm going to go ahead and collect this SQL Server database right here. When I did that, you notice that this section over on the right changes. This section updates based on the connection that I've chosen. All right, so first thing I want to do when I create a connection is give it a nickname. This is what I was talking about in the find and replace tool. I mentioned we're going to connect to the Northwind SQL database, so let's go ahead and call this Northwind SQL. And now, please note that there can't be any spaces in the nickname. Next thing I want to do is I want to enter the server that I want to connect to. For today, we'll be connecting to the mssql.windward.net server. And this is open, this server is open to the public. Instead of selecting the database right now, I'm going to move over here to the Credentials Center and enter in the credentials to connect to that server. The username is demo, D-E-M-O, and that's the same as the password. Password is D-E-M-O. Okay, now that I have my server and my credentials set up, I'm gonna go, I can now come over here and click on this database drop-down arrow. I could type in the database I wanted to connect to, or I can click on the arrow. And now the connection editor knows which databases I can connect to based on the server and also the username and password. I mentioned we would connect to the Northwind, so I'm going to go ahead and select that now. All right, we have a couple of options here for you. Also, when setting up, we have different display tables. User is a selection, user owned, user and systems. You can hover over any of these for a more detailed description of it. To the right of it is this read in metadata checkbox, which is checked by default. There's only a few times that you don't want to pull in all of the metadata from the database schema, but this is usually a great option to keep checked. All right, so we've set up a connection here manually. I've typed in the server name, I entered in the credentials, and I also selected the database. There's another way to set up the connection, and that's to use this use connection string right here. So if your DBA has provided you with a connection string to your data source, you can enter in that connection string right here instead of going through and entering in all the credentials manually. We'll stick with the manual process right now, and I will uncheck the connection string. And the last field in this details section is the root directory. And this is for using relative paths within your tags. So if you're referencing sub-templates or images that are on a shared network, you can provide the root directory for the designer to use to locate those sub-templates or images. All right, now that I have all the information has been set up to connect to the data source, let's go ahead and test the connection. So I'm going to come down here and click the test button. And down here, you'll see that my data source test succeeded. This lets me know I'm able to connect to the data source. If I wasn't able to connect, you'd see some message in red. But now that I know I am able to connect to the data source, let's go ahead and add this connection. I'll click the add button. And now you'll see I have my connection that I just set up, Northwind SQL, now listed in the active section. All right, now that I'm connected to the Northwind SQL database, let's go ahead and close the connection editor. All right. Well, after connecting to a data source, the designer automatically shows you the database schema over here on the right. And now these are all the tables and the views that I have access to based on the username and passwords that I entered in the connection editor. And another good thing with version 16, one of the latest versions, is we now have provided you with a search bar. So say you have a lot of tables, a lot of columns, and you just don't know where a value you're looking for is located, you can come in here and type in what you're looking for. See, we'll go with employee. Let's see if that comes up with anything. And then if we click on these buttons, you'll see that it opens up everything in here which has employee. You can type in the string you're looking for. You can have it match the case exactly. You can also use regular expressions for the search. But this is really handy, helpful when you have a lot of tables and a lot of columns. It'll help you get exactly right to where you're looking for just by searching for it. All right. So you can see the tables and the views here. You may have access to stored procedures. They don't show here in the data bin. They'll be displayed in the data tree, which I'll show you in a little bit. But to get started with this template, let's go ahead and create a basic table. I'll open up the Insert tab, and let's insert a table. 3 columns by 2 rows. All right, now that I have my table in the template, I need to use the designer to start tagging up my document. So for this first example, we're going to use this categories table right here. Let's expand it so you can see what's in it. Here we have the category ID, the category name, the description, and the picture. All right, let's now go ahead and give this table a header row to describe the data within a display. We have 3 columns, so let's go ahead and just display the category name. Let's display the description. And let's lastly do the picture. All right, now that we have our header row set up, I need to now supply this table with data from the categories table. So to do that, I'm going to put my cursor in the first column, second row, right here under category name. Now I need to enter in a tag. I'm going to start off with entering a for each tag so we can get all the records from the categories table. So within the Windward tab is our tags. I'm going to go ahead and click it. And now here are all the tags that you can add in your template. Now, if you hover over any one of them, it'll give you a short description of what that tag is used for. I'm going to go ahead and select the for each tag. And there it is. It's in the table. And now, wherever your cursor is, my cursor was right here under category, that is where the tag will be inserted in the template. All right, now that I have a for each tag in, I want to go ahead and select it and point out a couple of things for you. So up here in the Windward tab, we have this for each tag properties section. And now this is an easy way to tell which tag I've selected. So here, there's only one tag, it's for each tag, and so we see the for each tag properties. But later we'll see as we add additional tags, this will change. If we had an alt tag and it was selected, it would say alt tag properties. But we selected the for each tag, so we have the for each tag properties. And now within this section, you'll notice a couple of fields. We have the variable and the nickname fields. These are 2 fields that I want to point out right now. Now, by default, the designer provides you with the variable name. For this tag, the for each tag, it was giving a name of var name1. Now, the variable is the name that the designer uses to reference this tag. Let's go ahead and change it to be a little more descriptive. Since we're working with the category table, let's call this var categories. And press enter. It'll say, do you want to update all the tags that reference this for each tag? There is no other tags, so I'm just going to say no for the moment. All right, and now to make it easier for you to read the template, you can assign that tag a nickname. So instead of just seeing the for each tag as it is right now, we can give this a nickname. So when you're looking at this template later, you can easily identify what these tags are doing. Again, we're working with the categories table, so let's give this nickname categories. Now when I press enter, you'll see the for each tag goes from this for each name to categories, just like that. All right, now that we got our for each tag in the template, let's go ahead and select the data that we want to use with this for each tag. To do this, we'll use the shortcut in the tag properties section, this data tree button. Click on it, and this opens up our data tree. And here are all the tables, views, and now the stored procedures that we have access to. Because we've been talking about categories, I'm going to go ahead and select the whole categories table just by clicking it like that. All right, now I want to make sure that we're bringing back the data from the categories table. To do that, I'm going to select the categories for each tag and click on the preview button. All right, and here you can see that we're bringing back the category ID, the category name, the description, and the picture. Exactly what we wanted to use. So this is exactly what, so this for each tag is bringing back the data we want. And now I use this preview quite often. This helps me to make sure that I am selecting the correct data that I want to use when generating output. All right, so now our for each tag is getting the data that we want to utilize. Now to display the data, we'll need to use alt tags. I'll close this preview screen. Put my cursor just to the right of this categories table and go back up to tags. And this time I'm going to add an alt tag. All right, now that the alt tag is inserted in the template, I need to select what needs to be displayed in that alt tag. So I'm going to select the alt tag, go back up to the data tree. All right, so now our data tree looks a little different now. By default, the designer knows that we're referencing a for each tag. You can see the var categories name right here, the for each tag we set up. And this is all the data from within that for each tag, the category ID, category name, description, and picture. Now the option down here to select your tables, views, or stored procedures are collapsed by default, as you don't want to pull your data directly from these tables. If you did, you would just repeat the first record in the row, however as many times as it loops through the data. So we want to reference the for each tag. So I'm going to go ahead and select the category name under our var categories for each tag. And now that it's been associated with data, let's go ahead and make sure that it is going to display the category name. So with the category name alt tag selected, I'm going to click preview. And yep, here you can see we're getting a category name from the categories table, beverages, condiments, confections, and so forth. Exactly what we want to display. All right, good. So now let's go ahead and add another alt tag, this time to display the description. I'm going to click in this second column, second row, go to tags and add an alt tag. Now just like this first alt tag, I'm going to select it, go to data tree. I'm going to expand the var categories because we want to get the data from the for each loop. And this time we'll display the description. All right, let's add one more alt tag, this time for the picture. Click on its column, its row, where I want the data to be displayed. Click on tags, select the alt tag, select the alt tag this time, and now the data tree button. We'll expand our categories, and now we will display the picture. All right, almost done. Last thing we need to do is we need to add our end for each tag. And just to remind you, the end for each tag tells the designer when to stop looping through the content and displaying everything between this beginning and the ending tag. Well, I'm going to go ahead and add the end for each tag outside of the table. And actually, whenever you add a table to your template, you'll want to put that end for each tag outside the table. It's logical to think that you should put the end for each tag just after this last alt tag, but in actuality, so you don't create the list all on one line, you want to put the end for each tag outside the table. So with my cursor outside the table, I'll go back up to tags, and this time I'll add the end for each tag. Okay. Another cool thing about the designer is that we support about 90% of Word's functionality. We don't support word art, so we don't suggest you using it in your template. You could utilize the import tags to bring in your images and logos. But since we are using Word, we can style the table any way we want. So I'm going to go ahead and select this table. I'll open up this Table Tools Design tab, and let's go ahead and style the table. We do want a header row. We want banded rows. We don't need a first column, so I'm going to uncheck that. Let's give this table a style. Let's make it green like that. All right, there it is. That's how easily I can style my tables using any of Word's, most of Word's functionality. All right, now let's go ahead and generate the output so we can see what our template's looking like now. So I'm going to open up the Windward tab. I could click this output button, or there is a drop down. I'm going to go ahead and click on the drop down for the moment. And these are the different type of output options you have. You can generate a docx output. You can generate HTML, PDF. You can send the output to a printer. You can even generate RTF. The PPTX, PowerPoint, and XLSX Excel are grayed out. And that's just because outputs of that type don't cross platforms. So if you were wanting to generate Excel or PowerPoint outputs, you would actually have to use those applications, Excel or PowerPoint, to generate the output. The default is docx, so I'm just going to go ahead and select that option. When I go to generate the output, it'll say that I need to save the template. I'm going to say yes. Let's just save it to my desktop. All right. It's creating the report. I'm going to go ahead and split the screen so we can see both the template and the output at the same time. Oops, sorry. I'm also going to close this data bin. We're not going to need it right now, and it just makes the screen a little clunky with too much. All right, so over here on the left is our template, and over here on the right is our output. We got our category name, our description, and our picture columns. You'll probably notice that we're not actually displaying the picture right now. We're just showing the raw data from the database. But let me show you how to correct this so that our output looks how we want it to display. I'm going to close this for a second. And now I want to select this picture alt tag. And again, you can tell that I've selected an alt tag because we see the alt tag properties. And I can give this tag a type by just clicking on this type drop down. Here we can define this tag to have data of type base64 template, bitmap, date, hex template, number, PDF template, TXT. But since we want to display an image, we're going to want to select bitmap. And when I do that, you can now see that our alt tag has changed to an icon. So this just gives you a preview of the size of the image that will be displayed. And I can also change the size of that image easily by clicking on this size drop down. Here I can choose the size to be based on the bitmap, the specified, I can specify the height, specify the width or the container. Let's just go ahead and keep it with specified width for right now. Now, before generating output again, let's look at the preview. Is this alt tag actually going to return an image? So if it's selected, I'll click preview. And yep, yes it is. Here we go. The preview gives us a picture of the image. Now let's go ahead and generate output again. See what the picture's going to look like in the output. Say yes to save. Split the screen again. Okay, and now we have our pictures in the picture column instead of just the raw data. All right, next thing I'd like to point out is that when you connect to a data source, you don't need to connect to just one. You can connect to multiple data sources as once, as well as different types. For example, we could also connect to JSON or XML or OData. You may not commonly connect to two different data types, but I just wanted to let you know that that option is available. So I want to go ahead and add some text to our template just so we can separate this first table from this next table we're going to add to the template. So I'm just going to add a JSON table to view. All right. So now let's go ahead and connect to some JSON data. Here, as I mentioned, we're going to set up a JSON table. So let's go ahead and connect to some JSON data. So still within the Windward tab over here, I'm going to click on the data sources button. But before I do, I just want to point out that you can now see the data sources button has a green circle. And that's just to let you know that I'm connected to a data source right now. I think earlier we saw it had a yellow triangle that indicated that we weren't connected to any data source, but since we are now connected to this SQL data connection, we see the green circle. I'm going to go and click on the data sources to open up our connection editor again. Here you can still see the Northwind SQL under the active. Well, let's go ahead and now create a new connection, a connection for JSON. So I'm going to come over here to the new tab and I'm going to select JSON. Now I could enter in the file. Well, first thing before I do anything, I always like to make sure it has a nickname. This will help me know what this connection is connecting to. So this time we're going to connect to our Southwind JSON data source. So we'll call this Southwind JSON. All right, now that I have my nickname set up with no spaces in it, I can type in the file or the URL here, or I can go ahead and click on the folder icon at the end of the field. All right, So when you install the designer, you get in your documents folder, this auto tag folder right here. So I'm going to click it. And in here, you'll have access to your data sources and also some sample templates. You may not have these backups. I just was doing different things, so I just wanted to keep a copy of them. But you'll have the data and templates. Let's go ahead and select the templates just for a minute before we set the data sources, just to see what's in here. So I'm going to click on templates and change this file extension from JSON to all files. And so when you install the designer, a little over 200 samples templates are also installed, which we're cleaning up all the time. These are all our Word templates right here. But up here at the top, you could also access some more Excel templates, some Podified demo templates, some Pod templates, PowerPoint templates, and here are our tag templates, what we were looking at through the samples button earlier in the webinar. All right, but since we're going to be connected, since we're connected to a data source, we're not going to connect to any templates. Let's go back to the Auto Tag tab. Let's change this back to JSON files, and let's open up the data. In here, we have a couple of JSON data files for you. I mentioned we'll be connecting to the Southwind. I'm going to go ahead and select it, click Open. All right, once I have the path to the JSON file, I can give this protocol, I can give it a protocol, I can add properties if needed. But since this is all I want to do right now, let's go ahead and test this connection to make sure I can connect to it. I should, since this data source is on my machine. I click test, yep, data source test succeeded, perfect. So let's go ahead and add this new data connection. And click add. And now in the active section, you'll see I now have my two data sources. First one for the Northwind SQL, and the second one is for the Southwind JSON. I've heard of up to about 9 XML files being referenced at once. You can connect to as many as you need. I just wanted to point that out, that you do have the ability to connect to multiple data sources, and those data sources being of multiple types. Now that I have my connection set up, let's go ahead and close this connection editor. And now you'll notice that the Windward data bin looks a little different. I still have my tables and my views from the Northwind connection. But now I now have my JSON connection as well, all with the parent and child nodes. All right, so there's another option to make things easier for you when setting up a table or creating a table. Let's say we want a table to display employee information. Well, I can come over here and I can select the employees table and bring it over here and drop it right in where my cursor is. When you do that, it opens up this pop-up window, which allows you to choose specific columns that you want added to the table. We don't need the table to have all these columns, so I'm going to go ahead and deselect them all. But I do want to have the table display the first name, the last name, but we actually want the first name to come before the last name, so I can come over here and change the order. So now the first name is before the last name. Let's go ahead and display the hire date as well, and also the country. All right, now that I have the column selected that I want for this table, I can click OK. And the designer has now created the table for me, all with my for each tag, all the alt tags, and of course the end for each tag outside of the table. Well, let's go ahead and clean up this header row a little bit. I want to add some spaces between these words. So first name, last name, date. All right, now to make sure that we're actually pulling the data that we want to see, we'll go ahead and select this employees table and click on preview. All right, well, this preview is a lot different from our SQL preview because this is dealing with JSON as opposed to table columns that are formatted a specific way for SQL. But you can still see that, I guess not, it's truncated. But here we are pulling in data from the JSON. I just can't see it that well. Again, that's just because this is JSON preview. Let's go ahead and preview the first name alt tag, see what it's returning. Here, we're getting the first name, and yep, Nancy, Andrew, Janet, yep, that looks all like first names. Exactly what we want. Now that our table's set up with the tags in to pull and display the data, let's go ahead and style this table. So I'm just going to select it. Go back up here to Table Tools Design. We do want to have a header row. We still want banded rows. We don't want first column. We don't want banded columns either. Okay. We want header row and banded rows. And now we want to give it a style. Let's switch it up. Let's make it blue this time. All right. Again, very easy to style your tables. So now let's go ahead and generate output to see what our template looks like now. Say yes to save. All right, we still have our SQL table up here at the top in green, but now we have our JSON table in blue down here. You may notice that the hire date isn't so reader friendly. This is actually the raw data that's coming in from the JSON file. And we can format this date to make it more reader friendly. Let me go ahead and close this output to show you how to update the hire date. So with the hire date selected, I'm going to go up to your alt tag properties, and I'm going to click on the format data button. And similar to Excel, I can format the date. Let's make the date long date format. Once we've selected the format we want to use, I'll go ahead and apply it, close it. And now let's just go ahead and preview this alt tag again, just to see if we're getting the date in the format we want. Click preview, and yep, here we go. We got May 1st, 1992. Exactly the format that we want. Let's close this. Let's generate output. Split the screen. Close the data then. And we still have our SQL table up here in green. And now down below is our JSON table, now with a more user-friendly date. I could have styled this table differently at the beginning to make it a little more user-friendly. I didn't, but you can still do that. And now our date is in a format that is the way we want. All right, so this is great if you just want to create an entire list. But what if you want to provide some filtering before you generate output? Well, one way that you can do this is by using input parameters. Okay, let's close this. I don't need to save that. All right, and now when you want to create input parameters, you'll do that in the Windward tab. And over here in the data section is our input parameters button. So I'm going to click it because this is where we can define parameters. I will go ahead and add a new input parameter. And let's call this input parameter category. We'll apply this input parameter to our categories table in a moment. We can make this required by default. We can specify the type that this input parameter will be. Will it be currency, date, integer, number, select, or text? And select just gives you a designer drop-down list of values to choose from. We want to have text as our input, so we'll keep that there. And we can also provide a default value. I remember one of the categories was beverages, so let's go ahead and put this in here. Okay. And now that our input parameter is set up how we want it, let's go ahead and save it. All right, now how do we utilize input parameters to filter out the data? Well, to do that, I'm going to go ahead and select the categories for each tag. And I'm going to come up here and click on the wizard button. And this opens up SQL wizard. Over here on the left are all our tables and views that we have access to see. In the center section right here, here's all our columns. This is what data we're gathering: category ID, category name, description, and picture. And below this is our sort section. So what happens if I wanted to sort the output based on category name? To do that, I would go over to the tables. I would open up the categories table. Since we're going to sort by category name, I'm going to select category name and just drag it over here to sort. All right. And when I did that, you may have seen this over here, this on the right side. This is a data preview pane. This gives you a snapshot of the data that we're working with. Here it's being sorted by category name A to Z. If we wanted to change that to go Z to A, all we would do is click on that A to Z and select Z to A. And now you can see our category name column is now sorted Z to A. I add this back, change it back to A to Z. All right, now we came in here because we wanted to filter our output based upon that input parameter. To accomplish that, you do that down here in the filter section. I'm going to open this up a little more right here. In this filter section, or the SQL where clause, this is used to filter out data by using one of the options, an input parameter, one that we just created. To do that, you'll click here to add a group. You'll click here to add a filter. And we'll click here to select the node. So what are we going to be filtering by? We're going to filter by category name. So let's go ahead and choose category name. Now we can filter to make category name equal to some value, or we could change it to have it have starts with, contains, not equal to, different options. We want it equal to, so I'm going to keep that selected. And now we need to click here to set the value. So I'll click here. I can type in a value right here, or I can click on this drop-down arrow. And here are a list of all of the input parameters that we've created. I've only created one, so we only see one now, but if there was more, you would actually see the list. I'm going to go ahead and select that. And now our filter is all set up. And if you notice over here in the data preview pane, we're now just showing only one record because we chose to set a default value of beverages for this input parameter. And you may have also noticed that when we were setting up this where clause, this filter, it was added dynamically down here in this section. Well, you can't edit this grayed out section. You update this through the tag editor. When you want to update this select statement, we'll show you updating through the tag editor in the intermediate training. But I just wanted to show you that we are now dynamically adding our where clause for our input parameter right here. And input parameters or variables are defined by the $, the squiggly brackets. So here is our categories input parameter. And see, we're filtering the category name to equal the category input parameter. And you can also see this order by that we have set up right here. We're ordering by the category name. So kind of cool, because this helps you learn SQL statement syntax by just dragging and dropping certain fields. Okay, now that we set up the input parameter to equal the category name within the category table, I'm going to click OK. Now what happens when we generate the output? Click Output, say yes to save. We're now presented with a variable prompt. There could be many variables listed here. We only created one, so that's why we only see one right now. And we have our default set to beverages. Keep that as is, and let's go ahead and say OK. Let's split the screen. And now our SQL table is only displaying one record, and that record has the category name of beverages. Before we showed all categories, now we're only showing one due to that input parameter filtering. All right, well, what happens if we want to filter another way? What happens if instead of filtering based on a value that's entered, we want to filter based on the same value every time? Well, we can do that by using static filtering or filter statically. I'm going to close the output and come back here to our template. And so now we're going to filter statically on this second table that we created, this JSON table. To do that, similar to the SQL table, I'm going to select the for each tag. And I'm going to go up here to the wizard. And now this is a JPath wizard. It's a little different from the SQL wizard, and that's just simply because we're dealing with JSON data instead of SQL data. But you'll notice at the bottom, JSON, JPath is being generated dynamically, just like we saw in the SQL wizard. And now what happens if we want to sort this table based on some value? Well, to do that, you would click here to add an order by, and you would expand the employees, and you would choose what you want to sort by. Let's sort by first name. So I'm going to click this. And before I click OK, I also wanted to point out that we do have the search bar here as well. So with first name selected, I'm going to click OK. And it's hard to see because the results are truncated, but here you can see the first record is for Andrew. Now, if you wanted to change this to be descending order, I could go ahead and click on ascending, choose descending, and now here you'll see our first record is Stephen, opposite that then from Andrew. Now, what is if we wanted to filter statically? So no matter how many times we generate output, we want to see those employees who are in a specific country. Well, to do that, you would click here to add a group. You would click here to add a condition. And then you would click here to select the node. And I mentioned we're going to filter by country. So I'm going to select this country node. And similar to SQL, we can make the country equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, different types of options. We'll keep it equal to. And now we need a value, so we'll click here to set the value. If we were using input parameters, I could click on the drop-down arrow, but since we want to filter statically by those records where the country is the UK, we'll just go ahead and type that in. So I'll type UK. So now down here, you'll see query has been updated. Now we're pulling those employee records where the country is UK. And also here is our order by, which is order in by first name. -1, indicating we're going in descending order. So now that this is all set up, click OK. This time we're going to generate output again. We still have our variable prompts for our SQL input parameter filtering. Let's give this a different one. Let's filter the seafood record. Click OK. And let's flip the screen down again. So here we are still only displaying those SQL records where the category name is seafood. And now down here, we've added some additional filtering to our JSON table. And here we're only displaying those records in descending first name order where the country is UK. All right, well, that's how you filter your data, either dynamically using input parameters or statically by just giving it a value. All right, now let's get back to the slides. So I just want to make sure we've covered the topics listed. Okay, we went over the SQL and JPath wizards. I show you how to sort and how to add dynamic and static filters. We talked about the input parameters, which allows users to add input before generating output. I showed you how to add a default value, how to reference that input parameter in a tag, and I showed you the variable prompt for that input parameter. Okay, you may want to take a screenshot of this if you can while we're on this slide. Here are some resources that you can utilize. There's windward.com/resources/user-support-center. And this is our Windward User Center. It's a central page for everything Windward support. And within that page, you can find links to our knowledge resources, training videos, template libraries, and more. If you want to look up how to do something, you can do that at our knowledge base, at our Ohana knowledge base, and that's at ohana.windwardstudios.com. If you can't find what you're looking for, you can always reach out to our amazing support team at support.windwardstudios.com, or you can also email them at support@windwardstudios.com. So if you have a question that you just can't find the answer to, go ahead and contact our support team. We're happy to help. If you want any changes or have any feature requests that you want added to the designer or the engine, you can do this at ideas.windward.net. For our intermediate training webinar next week, we'll go over advanced uses of the for each tag, where we'll set up column-based temp tables instead of row-based tables. I'll go over how to show or hide specific things by using either the if-else tag or switch case tags. We'll cover conditional formatting, where we'll display output that shows red text for data meeting a specific condition. We'll go over adding a function to the table, to the template, and also importing some templates into your main template. There's going to be a survey at the end of this webinar. Please feel free to fill it out truthfully. Any feedback that you can provide will help me and the attendees of the next webinar. Let's go ahead and take a look and answer any of the questions that have been asked. I do see one question asked, so let me just have a moment to read it, and then I'll answer it for you. Okay. Question was a little more clarification on nicknames. Question was, you can add nicknames to a for each tag. Can you add nicknames to any other tag? Yes, you can. Let's see if I have a template open still. Cool, here's one. Yeah, nicknames can be added to any tag. We did it to this categories for each tag. We could do it to this alt tag right here. It has a default nickname. That's because we dragged and dropped, and the default is first name. Let's go ahead and change it to, let's put a space in there. First name, let's do it like that. The space kind of messed up the display. Let's just do it like that. There we go. Yeah, we can put nicknames on any tags, even end for each tag. Say you don't know that this for each tag is an end for each tag, end for each tag, have that colon, then for each tag. So you could come in here and even give this a nickname, end for each. Yeah, and now you know specifically that this is an end for each tag. Very good question. Yes, and yes, you can give nicknames to any tag. Well, I want to thank you all for joining today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And now, goodbye now.